Are you ready to take your message, your business, and your life to the next level?
Want to learn from someone with more than a decade of experience, training tens of thousands of people from all around the world?
Hi, Cliff. This is Pauline from Auckland, New Zealand.
John from Calgary, Alberta.
Amy Porterfield.
Michael Hyatt.
Dan here from Dunedin, New Zealand.
Ray Edwards. Mark Mason. Mike Stelzner.
Pat from Smart Passive Income.
It's Darren from Melbourne, Australia.
Now is the time to live the life of your dreams and do the work you feel most called to do in the world.
Welcome to the Cliff Ravenscraft Show.
Here's your host, Cliff Ravenscraft.
Welcome back, my friend. I am super delighted to have you tune into this particular episode because I have a feeling that there may be something that you've been trying to achieve in your life for several weeks, several months, maybe even several years, and for some people it is even multiple decades. And you haven't yet found the forward momentum that you thought that you should have by now. And my guess is that it may be a familiar scenario where you are consistently inspired by various techniques, tools, and strategies that have been presented to you. You've heard so many people share their frameworks and formulas for how to do whatever it is that you've been attempting to achieve success at. But have you taken time to look at those strategies, begin to implement those strategies, and yet not see the results that you were anticipating? Well, this is a very common situation, and it's what most people struggle with. The fact is that it's very common in our human behavior to have this action bias of, I just need this strategy. I need to go into this with an action plan, and I'm going to take massive action, and nothing's going to stop me, except for the fact that there's something more important than your strategy. Before you are able to move into strategy, you should consider what is your story. What is the narrative about this situation? What is the language that you are using, either when you're communicating to others or in your own head? What thoughts are rummaging around your mind as to why it is and what it means to accomplish this thing, and how difficult or how challenging or how easy and how simple the process is. The story that you will tell will determine what, number one, strategy you approach, and also the success with any strategy that you approach. So the story in your head is vitally important. If you listen to my episode with Michael Hyatt and the episode just before this, you know how important story is. But then even before we get into story, we have to consider what is our state. What is our current level of mindset? Where are we emotionally on the spectrum of emotions? And if you're familiar with this terminology, what is your current level of consciousness? Where are you calibrating on the map of consciousness at this moment in your life? Because what your state is will determine what story you're able to tell. And what story, what compelling future you tell will be determining the success of your approach to whatever tool, technique, strategy, framework, or formula. What I'm about ready to share with you is a full-blown episode of the Podcast Answer Man podcast, the all-new version of Podcast Answer Man. This is episode number 12, and I'm going to play it from beginning to end. But here's what I wanted to do. I wanted to bring this to the Cliff Ravenscraft Show because not all of you know that I brought back Podcast Answer Man. So this is a great way to let you know that you can go over to podcastanswerman.com or look it up in your favorite podcast directory and subscribe to it. There are now 12 episodes in the Podcast Answer Man all new version feed. Also, the reason why I'm bringing it to the Cliff Ravenscraft Show is because you may not have any interest in having your own podcast ever. And that's perfectly fine. But I want you to think about the fact that it doesn't have to be, I'm looking for a strategy to generate income from my podcast. Insert into that blank, fill in the blank, what is it that you're trying to achieve? What is it that you are trying to create in this world? What is the destination or the desired outcome that you're going after? Explain to yourself, write it down even on a piece of paper, what that is. And when you hear me talk about strategy for how to generate income with your podcast, just replace that language with whatever it is you're going after. And I can assure you the situation between state, story, and strategy will be 100% applicable to you. So without any further ado, here's the entire episode number 12 of the all-new Podcast Answer Man podcast. Well, hello and welcome back to another episode of the Podcast Answer Man. My name is Cliff Ravenscraft, and this, my friend, is the original podcast devoted to podcasting, helping you take your message, your business, and your life to the next level. That's right. It doesn't matter if you're brand new to the world of podcasting or if you've been podcasting for many years. There's something we can all do to take everything we do in life to the next level. And this podcast is an example for you of yet another reason why several years ago, after more than 12 years of teaching more than 40,000 people around the world how to launch a podcast and how to build an online business around your podcasting efforts, what actions to take to build meaningful relationships that have a powerful, profound, and positive impact on the lives of those people who are listening to your voice. One of the reasons why I decided to leave the world of teaching people the strategies around podcasting so that I could do the work I feel most called to do in this world, which is help people with their mindset and motivation, their experience on the mindset side of life. I went from Podcast Answer Man to Mindset Answer Man. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to demonstrate for you just in a very short 5-minute audio clip, something that I just had in a conversation with somebody on Clubhouse. In fact, there was a group of individuals. I hosted a room called Mastermind Session, Ask Me Anything. In this group, I talked with several different people about several different things, but a guy named Gary came up. And when Gary had come up, he had already listened to me communicate to somebody else about the importance of state, story, and strategy. So this was already the topic of conversation. And I talked about the fact that most people start with strategy, which is, this is what I want to do. This is what I have to do. This is what I need to do. If I don't do this, I'm going to feel blah, 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 it's something negative, or I'm going to experiencing blah, 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 something negative. I need a strategy. How do I do this? And they're expecting somebody that has experience teaching lots of people how to accomplish what it is that they're doing successfully. Can you give me some of that advice? And then I'm going to take it and run with it. Well, that almost never happens. It just doesn't. Because too many people start with strategy. And strategy never works until you get the right story in your mind, unless you have the right narrative, unless you have the right beliefs and thinking patterns that will support your momentum in breaking the inertia of inaction, getting momentum building and growing, having the ability and motivation to stay the course and follow through to your desired outcome, overcoming all of the obstacles and hurdles that stand in your way. You will not follow through on the strategy, even if you get around to starting it, if you don't have the right story. And the reality is that everything starts with what we call our state of mind, our state of being. It could also be our current mindset. It could be our current emotional state. It could be our model of the world. It's our belief system. It's our level of consciousness. It's where we live on the emotional spectrum of life. And if you have a lower state or a lower level of consciousness, then it's very difficult to have an empowering story that's going to ever allow you to get into any strategy that's effective. With that being said, now I've set up what Gary had already heard in this room in previous conversations. This is a 2-hour mastermind session that I opened up for anybody on Clubhouse who wanted to pop in. This was the final conversation. Now, what you're not going to hear is Gary's setup. The only thing you're going to know about Gary is his name, and you may hear his voice. But let me just give you an overview, because it was about 10 minutes in length about him explaining his journey. So Gary came up to this stage and I said, Gary, how can I be of service to you? What's going on in your mind? And he says, wow, this bit has been incredible, this conversation. Thank you for so much value. So here's my story. Here's what I'd love to mastermind with you. I had a podcast and I have a podcast. I did interviews every single week, several days a week for 2 years straight. If I remember correctly, I think he might have done 4 or 5 podcast interviews per week. There were a lot of people who were inspired to go and do this a while back, and he was one of them. And so he's like, it was so much work. One of my greatest desires from the outset. So whenever this was, I would say it was close to 3 years ago, because he said that, for the past year, I've taken the past year off because I needed a break. He said that from the outset, my desire was to monetize this. My desire was to build my own source of revenue from these activities. Who knows, maybe I'd find a way to build a business around it. The problem is that I never could find a niche. I think everybody tells you that you should have a niche, and just my thoughts on that is that sure, maybe, and maybe not. There's ways to have a niche and not have a niche and still find success. But anyway, he says, one of my struggles is I could never find a niche. I just wanted to interview people and find their stories and all of this stuff. And the problem is that I could never find any sponsors for it. It was just so much work. It was so tedious, finding the people to interview, scheduling everything, preparing for the interview, recording the interview, editing the interview, and then doing all the things to market the podcast. And it was so overwhelming. And finally, I burned myself out after 2 years, and I never got around to doing anything to try to monetize it. He goes, so now I've taken some time off, and I'm ready to get back, and that's why I'm here. I'm wondering, he says, I think I'm going to change my approach, and I'm going to change the format to this, and he explained what he was going to change his format to. And he says, so my question to you, Cliff, is, if I don't have a niche, I'm not going to be able to monetize this. Is that correct? And I said, well, maybe not. I said, have you ever heard of, and then I talked about a strategy, and I gave him just one. I happen to know multiple strategies for monetizing podcasts, but specifically for somebody who does not have a targeted niche, I told him about my original podcasts where I was reaching tens of thousands of people with entertainment-based podcasts around television shows. And I didn't have a niche audience. I mean, you could say the niche audience were people who were interested in television shows, but I had the vice president of marketing for Disney listening to our show. I had people who worked as a waiter and waitress, firefighters. I had stay-at-home moms, every level of person you could possibly imagine. So I did not have a niche audience, but I did generate significant revenue from it. Here's one of those avenues. And I shared my strategy with affiliate income. So I told him, I said, have you ever heard of affiliate income? He had never heard of affiliate income. So I then went into probably about a 10-minute crystal clear dialogue about exactly what affiliate income was. And I gave him step-by-step instructions, exactly how to get started. In fact, I told him to go to cj.com, which is Commission Junction. I told him to go to shareasale.com, create a free account, go in, look for companies that would be of interest. You'll find national, international, globally recognized brands. Many of them will want some proof that, you're a good fit for them. Many of them will immediately approve you on the spot. My guess is that in 2 days, you will have at least 5 different companies that you can promote as a affiliate for your program. You can give people links. Let me show you and tell you exactly how to get those links, how to say them in such a way. I give him step-by-step everything right there on the spot, everything he needed to know. And I can tell you right now, the people who have come to me, who have been in exactly the same shoes, the same scenario, same place where Gary was. I've been podcasting for so long. My greatest desire from the outset was to start generating some money. I've tried this. It didn't work. And in a one-on-one coaching conversation, I said, would you be interested, instead of talking about how to monetize this, would you mind if we talk about the mindset, about where you're approaching? What does life mean to you? And it's been fun because over the years, they're like, Cliff, if you don't mind, I'd rather stay away from the mindset, stuff like that. I know that's something you're really passionate about. I just really need the strategy. And so I give the strategy. Now, in this scenario, Gary could have asked me for anything, but he asked me for strategy because that's what he thought he needed, was strategy. So I gave him strategy. But in my time as podcast answer man, occasionally I was able to say, okay, Cliff, sure, go ahead, ask me your questions. And I did. And what I was able to do is discern why it is they have not been able to successfully generate income in the past from their podcasting effort. It had everything to do with the story that they were telling themselves, the narrative, the beliefs that they have about money, the beliefs about their own worthiness, the beliefs that they had about their own worth, just all of this stuff. And what is possible, what's not possible, what's right, what's not right, all of these different things. And then I recognize, what is the state? Where is this person at? And some of them were right around the lowest rung of the ladder, which is guilt and shame. And from the guilt and shame level of consciousness, you're not going to have an empowering story that's going to allow you to move forward with any strategy. Now, some of them had grown all the way up into their level of consciousness of anger and desire, and that gets people started, but still does not create a powerful state. It's not a powerful state, that creates a powerful story. And so that story might get them further, but eventually they also tend to burn out. And so if you understand emotional intelligence, levels of consciousness, if you were interested in learning about these things that govern our lives, then you can understand that there's a greater state of being that you can exist in, which will allow you to create a greater story. And if you implement a greater story, you can take any strategy and run with it. Now, that's not saying that every strategy is guaranteed to be the perfect fit for you, but it's certainly not going to seem overwhelming. So, now, I've given you all of that backstory, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to play for you the very end of my feedback to Gary. So I said, Gary, I just gave you your step-by-step instructions. This is how you can generate probably somewhere between $200 to $400, maybe $500 within the next few months. How do you feel about this? Was this valuable? And here I'm going to give you what happened immediately following my delivery of the strategy. And just make that clickable. Is that helpful to you?
Yeah. It's another thing to figure out in this world. It seems like every time I turn around, there's something more I've got to learn. That's for sure.
Well, that's one way of thinking about it. So, Gary, in all things in life, we need to figure out state, story, and strategy. So what you started out with here is, I want strategy. Strategy, how do I monetize, right? I just gave you a perfect example of how you could be generating significant revenue from your podcasting efforts. Within the next 2 months, you could be making your first $200, $300, $400, $500. So it's that simple. It's all strategy. But strategy will mean nothing to you if you have a story like what you just said. And the story you just said came from the state that you have. The state is, well, I'm kind of in a place where I'm burned out and I need a break and I have to reset and I'm a little bit overwhelmed, and I'm a little bit of this. You're somewhere in the neighborhood of this level of consciousness of, wow, this seems like it's a lot of work and I don't quite know the answers. The story that you're telling is, wow, there's just another thing that is going to be piled on the endless list of things that I could or should do, blah, 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 blah. So what I can tell you, Gary, is if you want to start experiencing a significant, massive influx of income from your podcasting efforts, I just gave you one strategy. I could give you 15 more, but none of them will do anything unless you change that story, which is instead of saying, wow, that's another thing to put on the list of things that I need to learn, it could be something like, oh my gosh, that's an incredible thing. Wow, if there is one thing that I'm going to do over the next 30 days, I think I'm going to invest about 2 to 3 or 4 hours a week every week for the next 4 weeks to figure this out. Wow, Cliff, thank you for that. But to be able to have that story, you'd also have to have a different state of mind.
Ooh, that was fire. That calls for one of these.
Yeah, no kidding. Thank you. Yeah, so I've got those notes. I've got them written down. I've got CJ up on my top right now, on my desktop right now. So, yeah, thank you so much, Cliff. This whole couple hours I've been here has been amazing.
It is my pleasure. Gary, thank you for coming up. Jason, welcome to the stage. How are you doing? It's been too long.
Yes, it has. I'm doing fantastic, better all the time. When you were talking about the state and the story, I just wanted to jump in there and say Cliff knows what he's talking about, because almost a year ago in March, I sat down with Cliff and he coached me 2 coaching sessions. And we worked through a story that I had been telling myself that was a lower level of consciousness. I had been laid off during the pandemic, and I had adopted this mindset that I was unemployed. The very first question that Cliff asked me was, are you full-time self-employed? And my answer to him was, I'm unemployed, but I've been doing da-da-da-da-da. And all of these things that I told him. And then he stopped me and he said, Jason, I didn't ask you if you were unemployed. I asked you if you were full-time self-employed. And what you've just told me is that you've been doing all of these things to earn an income and you've been taking care of your family. So you should say something along these lines. You should say, I am full-time self-employed and I've been testing different income streams to find out what works to take care of my family. And when I had that revelation, that insight, when it came to me that night, that day, something switched in me and it changed the entire course and direction of my life, that I never would have been on this journey had Cliff not intersected my life at that moment.
Well, there you go. That is the conversation I had with Gary. And then I forgot to mention that I was going to play Jason's follow-up there that came in right after my conversation with Gary. But if you go back and just listen to the very beginning of where you hear Gary, it's like you'll hear the story he's saying. The story is, there's an endless list of things that I should do, that I should learn, and it seems like blah, 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 and yeah, that's for sure. And that's a story. And of course, if you think about state as an emotional state, listen to his emotional state. You don't have to be a licensed psychiatrist or psychologist to know that he is in a lower state of consciousness when he's telling that story. As a result of that, just imagine, had I not said what I said immediately after that, if I had not caused him to question his story, if I had not maybe interrupted the pattern of his emotional state at that moment, I can guarantee you he would not have taken action. I've been around, I've done this for nearly 20 years now. And because I've worked with so many people now, I have seen the patterns of who takes action and who don't take action. And that is why many years ago now, I made the transition away from Podcast Answer Man to Mindset Answer Man. One of my first products that I had offered when I made this transition was a building an online business workshop. That was where people would travel right here to my home studio, and they would come and spend a day and a half, and I would teach them all the things that I learned about what it takes to truly succeed in building an online business. In the sales page, I said, listen, if you don't have a podcast, that's awesome. In fact, you're probably going to have an easier go on this journey than those who already have a podcast, because those who already have a podcast have made the same mistake that I had made all the way back in 2005. And that is starting with step number 8 in the 11-step formula that I will be sharing with you on how to build an online business. By the way, step number 8 is create content. When you start with creating content and you haven't done the first 7 steps in this framework that I will teach at this workshop, here are some of the experiences that you are going to run into. And I started naming the pains and problems that most podcasters have presented to me as their obstacles, as their overwhelming circumstances. And so many people just said, Cliff, you're the podcast answer man. Teach me a strategy. Teach me a framework. Give me some tools and strategies for how I can do this with my podcast. And I'm like, I can give you tools and strategies, but from where I sit, I've worked with so many people. I know the patterns. I can just tell right here what I'm about ready to share with you is not going to work for you, or you're not going to work for it. There's something deeper here. And I just got so frustrated with the number of people that says, Cliff, I've only hired you for an hour. I really need the information. I really need the tools. I need the techniques. I need the strategy. And I'm like, okay, well, that's what you've paid for. I will give it to you. And I delivered. I delivered over and over and over again. And it was those people who were resistant to the idea of going deeper, of what is the narrative in your mind. What are the thoughts and beliefs that are causing you to feel the way that you're feeling? What is the narrative? What is the story? What is your state? Let's start here and get the foundation solid, and we can build whatever you want. And that's why I made the transition from Podcast Answer Man to Mindset Answer Man. By the way, if you are experiencing resistance in creating the things that you want to create in this world, if you are finding yourself butting up against your upper limit challenges, if you find yourself setting financial goals to break through to new levels of financial success, but you find yourself self-sabotaging, doing the same actions, getting the same results over and over again, if you are finding yourself in a cycle of behavior that is creating the same kind of results over and over again, and you're having a difficult time breaking free from that cycle for more than a couple of weeks or a couple of months, because we all can set a resolution or a goal and use our willpower, and as long as we're focused on it and we put enough attention and energy towards it, we could do anything for a couple of days, a couple of weeks, or a couple of months. But if you find yourself not able to consistently experience lasting change that lasts a lifetime and creating a new experience of life, I would love to have the opportunity to work with you on what is your state, what is your story, and maybe we can even talk about strategy. But that comes later. That's the third in the process. If this would be interesting to you, I would encourage you to reach out to me, email me, cliff@cliffravenscraft.com, and I will tell you what my current coaching offer is for the day. I'm not explaining my coaching offers for you right here, right now, because I am an ever-evolving business owner. I'm innovating all the time. I have lots of different offers at lots of different times. And so I know that this is going to be sitting around for the next 20, 30 years. And so whenever you email me, there'll be a special offer that I'll make to you. But I would encourage you, email me right now, Cliff@cliffravenscraft.com, put coaching in this subject line. And in your email to me asking about what is my current coaching offer, do make sure that you've mentioned that you listened to this podcast episode and specifically use the 3 words, state, story, and strategy. If you put those 3 words in there, I will immediately bump you up to the top of the list, because if you're reaching out to me for coaching and you understand the importance now of state, story, and strategy, and you'd like to delve deeper in that's where you and I can create miracles together. Reach out to me, cliff@cliffravenscraft.com. Until next time, I encourage you to take everything you do to the next level.
Mindset and